Hey, what's up? It's Tony Campos.
This is Ken J. We're Static X, and that just happened.
Hey guys, what's going on? It is Front Row Joe. We are here at Stache next to Revolution Live for the Static X Regeneration Tour. Look who we got on stage. We got Ken J. We got Tony Campos of the original lineup of Static X. Guys, very, very happy, excited to have you. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks, man. Yeah, good to be here.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's good to be anywhere with all the miles that you guys have. And we're going to get into that. Certainly, the Regeneration Tour, as I mentioned, it's a memorial for the dearly departed Wayne Static and the celebration of Static X music, most certainly Wisconsin Death Trip. 20 years old. Does it seem like 20 years has gone like that?
It flew past. Mm-hmm. It really did. Maybe not the first 3 years we were touring it, but since then, yeah, it's kind of flown past.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of work, it's been a labor of love to get this thing on the road. Certainly talking with the family and getting their blessing. Then next, making sure the guys, you and Koichi, and were available. I mean, you're busy with all other kinds of things as well, so that fell into place. And finding a singer, not least of all, it all kind of came together. So looking at the internet traffic, it seems that with the sold out shows that everyone is digging it. Is there anything that has surprised you about this tour so far?
Just it expanded so much more than we thought. I mean, when we initially thought about this, you know, it was just going to be like one run here in the States, and before we knew it, it snowballed into, you know, the overseas, Australia, Russia, Europe, UK. It's been incredible, man.
Yeah. And that's the power of Static X music, right?
Apparently, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it really... the snowball effect started happening really even before we started touring. We started hearing, you know, rumblings about Australia and Europe, and then after the first couple of weeks, yeah, it just picked up a huge head of steam. So we're riding it, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure it feels good too. Again, a memorial to Wayne. You mentioned overseas. Certainly, you guys just got back from Australia. How's the reception been overseas, especially the places where Static never played, like Russia?
Yeah, that was incredible, man. The response was overwhelming. It's incredible to be able to take it somewhere the band never went to, and to get a response like that is just really overwhelming, man.
Yeah. Again, I imagine it feels really good, and for the reasons that you guys are doing it as well. So again, Regeneration Tour, you guys are heavy on Wisconsin Death Trip album. You got some other flavors thrown in there as well, but since it is kind of taking a walk down memory lane, if we can be nostalgic for a little while, if you can think back and look in the Rolodex, you guys were together about 4 years before you were actually signed with Warner Brothers. Is that correct?
Well, it's Wayne and I were together for 6 years.
But as Static X, I mean.
Yeah. Static X really effectively was 1994. Koichi left for a little bit in 95, late 94, early 95, somewhere around in there. And it was probably as a three-piece, we started writing the first 2 or 3 songs that became Static X, and band started getting a little popularity. So yeah, we begged Koichi to come back in the band just because he completes us. It's just, you know, the band has a sound, and he just changes it and enhances it, and it was about, you know, the band that we got popular in Los Angeles, but our signing took about 8 or 10 months. There was some stuff going on. We didn't do bidding wars, but yeah, it took a little while, but yeah, about 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah. Well, you kind of answered my next question. Well, besides Warner, were there anyone else knocking? Were there any other A&R guys that said, "Hey, come take a look at us"?
Yeah, not really. It was the way we got signed was something our manager at the time, Andy Gould, put together. He had a deal with Warner Brothers to bring bands, and we were the first band he brought over. So it was kind of the deal was there. It was just hashing out the details, and that's what took a while. But the deal was there. There was really no one else on the table because it was Andy's deal. So yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. And 95, Warner had a huge upheaval, and they had a lot of turnover, and all this stuff was going on. Can you take me back to that meeting? Was Warner Brothers like, Static X, what is this noise that you're bringing me? Was it something that they were pursuing?
What originally started it was the vice president of Warner Brothers at the time was a guy named Stephen Baker, and Stephen Baker was all in. And unfortunately, probably, I think it was so close, we were within a weekend of getting signed. And that Friday, Stephen Baker got fed up, walked out. Yeah. Threw his keys on the table, walked out. And yeah, so then the process began. And
did you think, oh no, there goes our shot?
Oh yeah, scared to death. And like I said, Stephen was all in. Stephen Baker was a great guy, and so the weird thing about it was effectively, for all intents and purposes, Andy Gould became our A&R guy. And yeah, the process. We were signed basically like on an independent or an imprint label, but it was distributed by Warner Brothers, and that's how it worked. And then eventually, we got an A&R guy with Troy Wallace, and things became a little more traditional in that sense. But it was weird, I mean, we were almost like 2 years into touring when we got Troy even, because there was such upheaval. That was when the AOL Time Warner thing came around. The guy who was our A&R guy went off to another company. So yeah, it was our whole career has been strange.
So you had a little anxiety there, but you get signed, then they say, you know what, we want to start making some money off of you. Make us a record. You step into Grandmaster Studios. Can you think back, newly signed, even though you've been together for a while, like you said, but now you're in a studio, you've got a big company behind you, putting money into the studio time, and brand new for you guys. What was your mindset?
It was just like, dude, we're making a record, or it's like, oh, we're in a real studio, like a huge mixing console. It's like, we're so green, I myself in particular, I was just like losing my mind. I was like, holy shit, I was like, but the funny thing is, I still had to go to work. I kept my day job until like a week before we went out on our first tour. But conveniently enough, the studio we were at was right across the street from where I had to work. So I'd spend all day there at the studio, and then at night I'd go work.
Not a bad commute.
Right? Yeah. So it was kind of convenient. Worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is pretty crazy. So you guys make the record, and it comes time to name the piece. Wisconsin Death Trip as well, documented where it came from, the 1973 book and all that good stuff. But whoever came up with it, when it was put on the table, what was your first reaction? You want to call it what?
Well, at one point, when we were in the process of getting signed and everything was going down, our lawyer came back to us and said, you don't trademark a band name, you service mark it, and there are 13 other bands with the name Static. because we weren't Static X yet. And so at one point, Wayne's older sister, Lisa, back when Wayne and I were still in Chicago, we had played a show in Kalamazoo. She was still in college at the time. And so we just stayed there at her apartment, woke up the next day, and there's this book on her table, and it's Wisconsin Death Trip. And completely interesting book. And but it was out of print, you know. And so that name kind of always stuck with us, you know, specifically Wayne, because when they told us that we couldn't service mark Static, Wayne's like, let's call it Wisconsin Death Trip. Let's call the band Wisconsin. Obviously, the label was like, no, it's too long. Death is in the title. You know, there was a bunch of stuff about that. But, yeah, the song already existed. And so...
It's got a nice ring to it.
Yeah, it had a nice. It flowed off the tongue.
Yeah. So when you guys brought it up then for the name of the album, if not the name of the group, it was a little easier pill for them to swallow at Warner Brothers.
Yeah. They're like, oh, you can call the record that. Yeah, just don't call the band that. Yeah.
I like it. And knowing the music that you guys grew up with, can you point to any specifics of what influence made it onto Wisconsin Death Trip from your, growing up and who you looked up to and idolized?
Well, yeah, that's the cool thing about the band was like we all have different tastes in music, but there are certain things that we all kind of intersect. And that's kind of what made it into the band. Like myself, I'm a old thrasher death metal kid, and so I got to incorporate some of that with the low growly vocals and stuff. And Wayne liked a little bit of that stuff. In particular, Obituary's third record. So I got to incorporate a little bit of that. And then Koichi, he was really still is into like a lot of electronic music. So when he came in and got to add his keyboard parts and stuff, that brought a whole nother dimension to our sound. So yeah, there's a lot of different influences that went into the music.
Well, EDM hadn't been around, certainly drum and bass, but I can certainly point and see the genesis with you, with all the cymbal action, hi-hat action, and the beats. So what kind of influence did you bring into Wisconsin Death Trip?
The idea, the great irony of it was that we weren't trying to make a metal album. There were things that were influencing all of us at the time. We all loved Prodigy. We all loved Chemical Brothers, Crystal Method. That was an influence. But Prong and Ministry, that was another thing. And specifically, the Prong Rude Awakenings album, I just really love the drumming on that. And it kind of had a Stuart Copeland feel with the hi-hat work, and then we had this programming. So, yeah, I would say, I was able to simplify by just listening to a lot of Stuart Copeland, and add stuff off that simplification by listening to Ted Parsons at the time. But mostly, I just threw it against the wall and saw what stuck. It's like, does this work? And we all, when we were working on songs, we all had an influence on each other. Do you like it? Do you don't like it? And that was always out there in the open. There's not really a note on the album where nobody likes it. It's really, it is what it is, and we're pretty happy with it 20 years later.
Yeah. So very collaborative then. That's awesome. That's really cool insight into that. So the album is put together. You have a name for it. Now it's time to pick the singles. You have Push It, which blew the roof off and really catapulted you guys, certainly with the incessant touring as well. That helped. Bled for Days, and I'm with Stupid. Now, I'm with Stupid video takes characters from Push It, but also has 7 monkeys hidden in it somewhere. 2 questions. First of all, why? And second question,
It has what?
supposedly it has 7. Is this news to you guys?
Yeah, monkeys. Yeah.
Where'd you get this? Is that an urban legend?
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I'll check my sources, but I couldn't make that up. I did not make that up, but supposedly there are 7 monkeys, and I watched it,
Does it have anything to do with that Brad Pitt movie, The Seven Monkeys?
12 monkeys.
Or 12 monkeys.
Yeah, he had more.
More. All right. Well, he's Brad Pitt. You know.
You can have more
Yeah.
monkeys.
So nothing about the 7 hidden monkeys.
Not that I know of. You'd probably.
That's how well hidden they were. Yeah.
I couldn't find them either. I couldn't find them either. So okay, well, gotcha. All right, so that dispels that a little bit.
Great. Now I'm gonna be googling. Yeah, I'm gonna be googling until showtime.
Yeah. Good luck. If you find them, let me know, because I could not. You had made mention, Ken, that you never know when a song is going to be a hit. You just never know. So, again, the most iconic for Static X, Push It. Why was Push It made a single? What was the conversation of why that would be a good single?
Ironically, Push It was not the first single. Bled for Days was, only because would have been about 6 to 8 months before we started touring. The Bride of Chucky came out, and Bled for Days was on Bride of Chucky, and that people just grabbed onto that song. KUPD in Phoenix was the first national radio station to play it. Dennis there, who was program director and DJ at the time, really pushed the song. And so at the time, Warner Brothers, although they knew who we were, but it was still this baby band, and there was still months before the album. So, it's not like people were doing their homework on the band. However, there was an opportunity to tour. So, we did like a month-long mini tour on our own in November, had a couple of weeks off in December, did a show with Slayer on New Year's Eve in San Diego, and then we're out with Fear Factory. And that's still, a few months before Death Trip. And what happened was they were talking about re-releasing Bled for Days as since the album had actually come out. But Push It was the first song. People grabbed onto it. The very first time we played it at a show, we were like that with every song where, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? I remember playing it the first time at a club called Coconut Teaser, and we ended it, and it was dead silent for about 5 seconds, and then the place just, wah! So
I had to process it first.
Yeah, and so then it was like, okay, maybe we have something. Then people just grabbed on to Push It from there. And it's kind of been a staple since. I don't remember too many shows where we did not end with Push It.
Yeah, gotcha.
Maybe a couple where Bled for Days was the last song, but really, that was, like I was talking about, not necessarily wanting to make a metal album. Push It debuted on 120 minutes. Okay. There was no heavy video show at the time, heavy music. So and it was on active rock radio. It's kind of an unusual heavy rock song with death metal backing vocals that was about this close to being on top 40 radio. So we'll take it.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, and my next question is, that's when you really know that you are genre innovators, creators, pioneers, is the music you put out does not have a box to fit in. Did you get a sense of that when you guys were creating the music, that this is something completely different, although you had, ministry and elements of that, but did you have a sense that this is evil disco, something that no one's ever heard before?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely felt like, it was our twist on what we liked from bands like Ministry and Prong and Prodigy and Crystal Method. It was our brew of all those ingredients just mixed together, So yeah, we had a little stamp of it on it,
Yeah. Well,
But let's just say I don't. We've had this question a couple of times where the thing is I don't think we sat. There was never a meeting where the four of us were sitting around and we were going, "Oh, let's be different." There was a time where it was like, we got to start having fun. Wayne and I were going home from a show, and we were a good band, but and it was unique, but the songs were too long, and we were going home from a show, and he and I just looked at each other and we're like, man, I hate to tell you this, but I'm bored with the music we're writing. And so then that was the moment of, let's try something different. But there was never a conscious thing of, I think the harder you try to be different, you kind of conform, which is a really strange thing. We just were ourselves. We just decided to have fun with music, and we just used the four unique elements the guys bought.
Yeah, that's really cool. I would be remiss to not mention, certainly the namesake of the tour is also the upcoming album. And as a Static X fan, I have to ask, if not only to hear Wayne's vocals again, do you have any updates on that release?
Yeah, we announced the release date a month ago, I think. Is it May 21st, I believe? So yeah, once we get done with this tour, that's the main priority, is get that done, and we'll finally get it out to the fans.
Yeah, that's exciting for sure. I'm sure for you guys as well.
Well, we've been working on this thing for a while now, so we're excited. We hear where it's going, and it sounded killer, and just looking forward to finally getting it into the hands of the fans.
Yeah. And not knowing how you typically write music, was it different? Was it a reconstruction because you started with the vocals and then wrote the music around it, that rather than vice versa?
Well, that stuff, yeah, that was totally different. But the early stuff that we got that didn't have Wayne's vocals on. It was just like a couple of riffs and a drum program, and that's how Wayne would bring in ideas into the rehearsal space. So in a weird way, it was like working with Wayne again. So yeah, that was really cool, man.
That is cool. That is cool. Well, I mentioned that just happened and the namesake for that. So I'll pose the question to both of you. We'll start with Ken. In your long career, and certainly with Static X, is there any that just happened moment that stands out to you that you could share with us?
Man, I'd have to think about that for a while. I mean,
should I go to Tony then?
Yeah, go ahead. Him first. Put him on the spot.
yes, you are, man.
Yeah, right.
There it is.
Just the span's whole career is just in one. That just happened. Yeah. I mean, from the first time we got to Ozfest, and we're like, from the first time we actually got on a tour bus, that tour we did with Pantera, Slayer, Morbid Angel. I mean, it's all just been like a crazy ride, like we never expected any of this to happen, Like I remember talking to Wayne about, once we started talking to management, we were talking about touring and how he was thinking of buying a dually pickup truck and a trailer with the quad cab, so like we could pull the trailer and have gear in the back of the truck, and then we can all sleep in the cab, and like that was the height of our aspirations, So everything that happened after that is just mind blowing, So like and that we're here 20 years later, it's just unbelievable, man.
So it's just been a steady progression of that, just happened moments that top each other.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
That's good. What about you, Ken?
He kind of really. That's perfect. All the firsts, and I don't. he brought up the thing about the quad cab dually diesel. Like, Wayne and I had serious discussions about that. Like, we thought, well, this is the best thing. This is the best thing for us. It'll be efficient, and diesels last forever, and it'll be really. That'll be great, And then, we get the first bus. Well, when we were in an RV, even going into an RV, because, there was a point where when Wayne and I were in Chicago, we did a tour once in a Escort station wagon.
Oh, wow.
3 guys, all of our gear, and I can't tell you how awful that was. The Chevy Lumina vans, like stuff like that. So getting an RV with a when we bought that 5x8 trailer, we were like, woohoo!
Big time.
Oh, it was huge, and so all the firsts were that just happened. Did that just happen moments.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. Certainly, guys, really appreciate your time. Can't wait for the show. We are here, again, just as a reminder, if you hadn't picked it up yet, legendary Ken J, Tony Campos, Static X, and that just happened.
Hey, what's up? This is Tony Campos.
I'm Ken J, and that just happened. We should probably say Static X,
maybe?
I was waiting for you to say that.
He's like,
Yes, that just happened. Ready?